live on a Saturday. Okay. Hey, pussies. Welcome to my second bonus video number 13. I'm Positive Pussy. I wanted to do this episode during Pride Month because I think it has a lot to do with the LGBT community, because tonight I am talking about sexuality. But before all that, gotta get the regular stuff out of the way. Subscribe to my YouTube, Positive Pussy. Follow me on Twitter at Positive Puss, and check out my website, positivepussy.live, for all the amazing links and the awesome resources that I post on there. And keep watching this month because my girlfriend and I are going to SF Pride, and I'm really excited. I'll be posting videos and pictures, and I'll tell you all about my experience right here. So stay tuned for that. So sexuality, this should be kind of a shorter video, just really quick. I wanted to talk about it because I've been really interested in these things, and because I wanted to research them, I figured why not share the information with you guys. So sexuality, why is this important to talk about? Well, mainly because we live in a heteronormative society. We're limited in our choices. Oh, I'm sorry if you guys couldn't hear me. My microphone was falling down. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me better now. Sorry, before I got into the main stuff. Jeez. Okay, so sexuality. We live in a heteronormative society. We're limited in our choices. And when you feel like you don't fit into any of the groups, you have feelings of isolation. And so hopefully with science, I can show y'all that everyone is different, but all these variations and differences are normal. And there are ways to describe your sexuality if you so choose. But regardless, you can show affection to whoever you want. You can be attracted to who you feel attraction to, and you can be inconsistent. 1 month you can be all about the dick, and the next month you could have a hankering for pussy. That's okay, and that's fine, and that's normal. When we have a choice, our sexual freedom is validated, and sex should be free and fun, and you can have any kind of consensual sex that you want. In the last two videos, I talked about the Kinsey scale. So if you don't know, go watch the videos, episode 11 and episode 12, or video 11 and video 12 are the ones where I talked about the Kinsey scale. But today I'm looking at some much more inclusive scales. As I was learning about the Kinsey scale, I started questioning my own sexuality because I realized I formed attachment to my girlfriend and my boyfriend in different ways. I love them both, but obviously our relationships are different. They each have their own separate challenges and benefits. And so I'll be using myself as an example throughout this video. So if there are any confused bisexuals out there, similar to me, who've never really liked the term bisexual for one reason or another. So if you're confused and you don't know what to call yourself, that's fine. Bisexual is just a lack for a better term. And hopefully, this will help us at least describe our sexuality to others. Maybe it will be helpful in navigating future romantic relationships as well. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the Klein Sexual Orientation Grid. So Dr. Fritz Klein felt that the Kinsey scale was too one-dimensional. You're assigned one whole number, and this is supposed to encompass your sexuality. But sexuality is complicated. And Klein felt that sexuality was defined by more aspects or dimensions that the Kinsey scale didn't include. So this sexual orientation grid takes into account your past, present, and ideal future sexualities, which is why the test is better for young people like me, people who are younger, and maybe grew up in a more heteronormative society. I know that I'm very different now, and I'm still changing quickly, and this grid takes into account the way sexual feelings change. So if you're curious, I found two very good versions of the test. You can fill it out and add it up and see where you fall. But basically it measures the past, present, and ideal future across 7 factors. Sexual attraction, so who are you sexually attracted to? Sexual behavior, who do you actually have sex with? Sexual fantasies, that's number 3. Who are your sexual fantasies about while you masturbate, daydream, or fantasize, just anything that's purely in your imagination. Number 4, emotional preference. Who do you catch feelings for? Who do you get crushes on? Who do you love and like? Only members of the same sex, the other sex, or both sexes. And number 5 is social preference. So who do you spend time with? Which sex do you socialize with most? I don't think this one has to deal with, when I took the test, it was not what gender or orientation you hang out with, but usually what gender. So who do you spend the most time with? Lifestyle preference. And then this one is more of who the orientation of the people you hang out with. So what's the sexual identity of the people you socialize with? Are more of your friends straight or homosexuals or bisexuals? And then last one was sexual identity. So how do you think of yourself? And that one, or what would you identify with right now or in the past? And in the future, do you think you're going to stay the same, or are you leaning towards another way? And I love that this test takes into consideration that sexuality is dynamic and changing. Where a person is today is not necessarily where they were in the past or where they will go in the future. And we have to understand all of these aspects of sexuality if we're to understand sexual behavior. So like if you were to ask 18-year-old me if I was bisexual, 18-year-old me would probably say no, but I wouldn't deny that any interest or attraction in females. I just wouldn't have identified as bisexual. But at 18, I was also way too scared to attend to that desire for the female body. And I had already been having sex with guys for like 4 years at that point. So I wouldn't have said in my past history I was bisexual either. But 18-year-old me was very hopeful for the future, and she would probably idealize a bisexual future for herself because I was attracted to girls, and I still am. And in a perfect world, I would have had those opportunities to be with a girl before I was that age where I felt I was more ready to start engaging in more sexual activity. But sexual orientation, it's ongoing and it's dynamic, and it's a process, and people's behavior changes, and I think that that's a good thing. We're lucky that that happens, especially in my case. So I also like that this test looks at attraction and emotional preference separately, because a lot of people have sexual attraction to people that they could never have feelings for. And I think that sex and emotional attachment are important in sexuality. I know that there are times when homosexual males find themselves attracted to women, but that doesn't mean that they could happily be with a woman. Or there's guys that have just girlfriends, but they also sleep with other guys, and that guy might not define himself as bisexual because he only sleeps with men, he doesn't date them, and that's fine if that's how he wants to identify, but it's still part of his sexuality, and he's not straight. That would be deceiving. So sexual, though, because he doesn't make emotional attachments to men, so there's some gray area. Where does he fit in? So that's where this grid comes into play. And this goes for a lot of people. Like I'm a great example because I was attracted to girls and I had sex with females, but I didn't have an emotional attachment to other females until recently. So obviously all of these aspects play a part in my overall sexuality. So when I filled out the grid, I took into account my current situation, my past situation, and I only considered like the past 2 years, which is when I felt that my sexuality was starting to really become what it actually was. I was able to be free in my sexuality. And I also took into consideration how I would like to go forward into the future. So my results of the Klein orientation grid was 2.81. And these numbers are the same from the Kinsey scale, or you can look at them the same. So I'm between 2, which is predominantly heterosexual, but more than incidentally homosexual, and 3, which was equally heterosexual and homosexual. So mine 2.81 is closer to 3 than it is 2. So I'm closer to bisexual than I am more than incidentally homosexual. And that makes total sense for me because just based on the past 2 years and where I am now, 2.81 sounds like it fits me pretty well. And if I took this same quiz in a year, it might be a total 3, or I might be just slightly closer to 3, but we would just have to see, like, depending on my actual behavior. So that was the Klein sexual orientation grid. And now I'm going to talk about the Storms sexuality axis. So this guy, Michael Storms, was studying some sex stuff, which sounds like my dream. And he found that bisexuals engaged in as much heterosexual fantasizing as heterosexuals and as much homosexual fantasizing as homosexuals. And from this, he concluded that bisexuals must have aspects of both total heterosexuality and total homosexuality. So they have both aspects of a 0 and a 6. And to get a better idea, I drew a picture of the graph. So hopefully you guys can see it. I'll get it close to the camera. So that's the picture of the graph. And the cool thing about it is that you could be on this line exactly, or you could be on this line exactly. So you would be exactly heterosexual, exactly homosexual, or if you had a little bit of, if you were heterosexual a lot, but you had a little bit of homosexuality, you would be like right here on the graph. So you're in the bisexual range. So that means that there's a lot more area for people to be a little bit bisexual or a little bit homosexual, a little bit heterosexual. And I think that takes into account a lot of different aspects. You could be anywhere on this graph. Anywhere on this graph. So Storms was really looking at bisexuality and how to explain the nuances in the tiny bit of homosexuality some heterosexual people have. And I hold the belief that not everybody, I don't think anybody is perfectly a 0 or perfectly a 6. I think that everyone has some sort of attraction to the same sex every now and then. There's hot women out there that other women are always like, damn, she's hot. And like just that tiny bit of knowing that that person is attractive sexually is even though you would never do it physically or something like that, just the sexual fantasy or just the knowledge of them being attractive goes into your sexuality. So I just don't, this is a tangent. I don't think anyone is 100% straight or gay. But this graph, I don't know if you saw, but asexual is right here. It's outside of the graph. And that's why Storms was criticized, because it included asexuality as a separate sexuality that couldn't be combined with the others. But it is possible to be asexual and have components of heterosexuality or homosexuality, depending on who they make their emotional connection to. So the last sexuality measurement I want to talk about is the multidimensional scale of sexuality. It was mustered up by some smart guys in 1990, one of them being the guy who named UC Berkeley, in attempts to include all of the dimensions that are measured in sexuality. The reason why I spent more time on the Klein grid is honestly just because I like it more. But the multidimensional scale is very similar to the Klein grid. It acknowledges that a person's sexual orientation can change over time, that bisexuality can be more complicated than an equal attraction to both male and female. And it also includes more sexuality options and allows for the combination of more than one option. So the categories for the multidimensional scale are heterosexual, homosexual, heterosexual with some homosexuality, homosexual with some heterosexuality, concurrent bisexual, which means you desire both a penis and a vagina either at all times or just at once, or you just desire them both, like you would need them both to be sexually satisfied. Sequential bisexuality, which means you like both a penis and a vagina, but you can be okay with just one or the other at one time, or just like your desire depends on who your partner is at the moment. And then past heterosexual, current homosexual, past homosexual, current heterosexual. And then the last one is asexual. And so I took this quiz as well, and I'll post my results, and it actually is a little bit easier to see or to see the categories once you see like the results on there. But I took the quiz and I got equally sequential bisexual and concurrent bisexual. So I think that this is because in the past I was mostly heterosexual, and now that I'm mostly bisexual, so in a year this could probably change to just concurrent, but probably since I was just okay with just the penis for so long, I could be like a sequential bisexual, which means I'm okay with just the one. And I mean, I think that depends on just like how my life plays out in the future. But yeah, so if I took this in a year, it might be concurrent, or it might be still sequential. Yeah, it might be concurrent. I don't know if it would be sequential, but you can take this quiz too. And I'm going to post all of the links to the Klein quiz and to this one so you guys can see where you would fit in. But overall, all of these scales and grids agree on one thing, that sexual orientation is a continuum, and discrete categories can't define everything. Some people find that their sexuality does not fit neatly into any defined categories. Some people's sexuality shifts over time. Some people's sexuality is constantly changing. And some people have multiple partners. And some people consider their sexuality to be different with their different partners. And a person may be straight but enjoys socializing with queer people. Some people are asexual but have very fulfilling emotional attachments and relationships. So don't let society limit your understanding of your sexuality. I talk about all of these scales and measurements not because they're perfect at defining human behavior, but because they encourage us to think about human sexuality in new ways. And they give us the freedom to kind of disregard the societal standards and define our own sexuality for ourselves. Whatever fits you and your feelings best, that's what you should label yourself as or identify with. And hopefully in the future, everyone will accept the many sexual identities that exist in humans. But it starts with you. And as long as you create an environment for people to be themselves, and diversity is welcomed, then the world will probably be a better place. So that's all. I told you it would be really short, but I just packed all the information that I wanted to into a really short little information on human sexuality measurements. And it's Saturday night, so I'm clearly a sex nerd because I'm at home talking about sex measurements instead of going out and having sex. So I'll be uploading this video to my website, and I'll add the links to the Klein grid test and the multidimensional sexuality test. And you guys can take them and see where you line up or not, whatever you want. I think, hold on. I always forget to end the stream before I'm done talking. Okay. Bye, pussy.